Are you living your life in Christ? That's what we've looked at in our last two Bible messages from the Gospel of Luke. And so this was on the Sermon on the Plain, and Jesus, in this sermon that encapsulated what it means to be a disciple, his summary of teaching on following him, how to be a disciple, how to be a follower by living our lives in him. And so now we are going to see some examples of that as we continue on in the Gospel of Luke. Our lesson today is entitled Great Faith. Great Faith. And we're going to start with Hebrews 11, verse 6, because this is a powerful message about faith. If we're going to talk about faith, we need to understand that according to Hebrews 11:16, where it says, "And it is impossible to please God without faith. Anyone who wants to come to him must believe that God exists." That's an obvious, that's a no-brainer. "And that he rewards those who sincerely seek him." So if we are going to please God, first of all, we've got to believe there is a God. That's easy. Well, I won't say it's easy. For some, that's a struggle. But once we come to the understanding, the faith that there is a God, that this world didn't happen by chance, that there is such a thing as good and evil. And we see that so prevalently in our world today. If there is evil, there is good. And if there is good, there is evil. And the Bible makes that clear. And he goes on and says, but we also need to believe that he rewards those that sincerely seek him. That there's a blessing in seeking God. That we can find him. That we will be blessed by him. And that there is something positive about following God. And so that there is a reward. So we're talking about faith. So my question to you is, how much faith do you have? How much faith do you have? You know what? And I would love to say I have a lot of faith, but I struggle. I struggle with my faith. I struggle, not in the belief that there's a God and that he rewards us, but I struggle in those everyday things. I struggle when something bad happens and I worry. I struggle in those doubts about myself, about following God, about the church I minister for. You know, we all have those struggles of faith. I believe that helps us to grow in our faith. But I believe that there is a point where we can grow to the point of trust. That we can, as the title of this sermon talks about, have great faith. In fact, our text for our lesson today is Luke chapter 7, verses 1 through 10. Luke 7, 1 through 10. And we're going to see a story about a man and his faith. Starting in Luke chapter 7, verse 1, it says, "When Jesus had finished saying all this in the hearing of the people," that's the Sermon on the Plain that we looked at in chapter 6, "he, after this, entered Capernaum. There a centurion servant, whom his master valued highly, was sick and about to die." Excuse me. "The centurion heard of Jesus and sent some elders of the Jews to him, asking him to come and heal his servant. When they came to Jesus, they pleaded earnestly with him, 'This man deserves to have you do this, because he loves our nation and has built our synagogue.' So Jesus went with them. He was not far from the house when the centurion sent friends to say to him, 'Lord, don't trouble yourself, for I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. That is why I did not even consider myself worthy to come to you. But say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes, and that one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed at him. And turning to the crowd following him, he said, I tell you, I have not found such great faith even in Israel. Then the man who had been sent returned to the house and found the servant well. So, we actually don't even meet the individual here. But we are told about a man that Jesus says has great faith. A man with great faith. Again, our question is, how much faith do you have? I want to have this kind of faith. I want to have great faith. And so Jesus said that about this man. He says, you know what? There's a couple of strikes against this guy. First of all, he's a Roman. He's a Gentile. So he's not one of God's people, not one of his chosen people. In fact, he is a Roman, one of the occupiers, one of the people of the nation that is in control of Israel at this time. But not only is he a Roman, he's a Roman soldier, which even makes it worse because the Roman soldiers were the ones occupying and oppressing the people. We've talked about that in the past. If a Roman soldier stopped you and said, you need to carry my gear, you had to drop everything and pick up his gear, and that would be quite heavy, and you would have to carry that for 1 mile. And many of these Romans treated the Jewish people terribly. So here we have, he's a Roman, he's a soldier. So these strikes against him. And yet it tells us that Jesus sees great faith in him. In fact, not even in anyone, not even in his disciples, has he seen this great of faith. So let's dig in and see this great faith this man has. So first of all, we're told, excuse me, this man has a servant who he cares about, values very much, and he's sick. In fact, Dr. Luke, there's a few things you don't want to hear a doctor say. One of them is, oops. One of them is, here's your bill. But the worst is, I've got some bad news for you. And that's what Dr. Luke tells us here. There's some bad news. This guy, this servant, is sick. In fact, he's nearly ready to die. So it's not good. But this centurion cares about a servant, which is unusual in itself because in that society, servants would have been looked at as no different than animals or property. And yes, you might care for an animal or property. But you know what? He cares enough that he goes out of his way to try to have this servant healed. And so we see this, and it says he hears about Jesus. And as a result, he has hope. He has faith. Here is someone who can do something. He hears about this healer, this man, this Jewish teacher who is going around doing good, healing people. And so what does he do? He contacts the only people he knows, the Jewish leaders of the community, and says, can you put me into contact with this healer? I want to make a note here about faith. Romans 10 and verse 17 tells us this. So faith comes from hearing. That is, hearing the good news about Christ. Did this man hear good news about Christ? Yes, he did. And as a result, it produced hope. It produced faith in him. faith that he wanted to get a hold of Jesus. In fact, he went through channels that would, it would not be the normal channels for him to go to. Usually he would be accustomed to sending off some soldiers to get whoever he wants. This time he knows that's not the path. That's not the route he needs to take. His faith moves him to seek Jesus. So he contacts the religious leaders and says, can you go and talk to him? And so the religious leaders go. And again, why would Jewish religious leaders, remember, these same Jewish religious leaders hate tax collectors because they collaborate with the Romans. And here we have a Roman soldier. Well, we're told a little bit about him. That he, apparently they say, he loves our people, our nation. So even to the point where he has provided the funds, the labor, whatever it is, to build their synagogue. And so they even care about him. He's what would be called a God-fearing Gentile. He's not a proselyte. A proselyte means someone who has converted to Judaism. He's not converted to Judaism, but he is a God-fearing man. There's examples of God-fearing Gentiles in the Gospels, in the book of Acts. I think of in the book of Acts, Cornelius, another centurion who was a God-fearing Roman, a God-fearing Gentile. And as a result, he is seeking God and ends up calling for Peter, and he and his family are saved. And we have the first Gentile converts, the first Gentiles that turn to Jesus and are baptized into him. And we see the example of the Holy Spirit coming on them, God giving an indication. Now remember, Luke is writing to a Gentile mindset, the modern mindset. And so this is a story that's going to appeal to them because this isn't about some Jewish person with a servant. This is about a Roman soldier with a servant, and he's seeking Jesus. So again, he's heard the good news, and so this has produced faith in him. He's trying to find Jesus. And so he sent people to get Jesus. He's not forcing Jesus to come. He's asking. He's sending the Jews, and the Jews are pleading on his behalf. These same religious leaders that in a short period of time are going to be persecuting it and seeking to have Jesus killed, at this point are the messenger for this Roman. And so they come and they say, this guy's a good guy. This guy's a God-fearing Gentile. Can you help him? And so Jesus goes. In Jeremiah 29 and verse 13, God, through the prophet Jeremiah, tells us this. God speaking says, you will seek me, he says, and find me when you seek me with all your heart. Remember, we need to have that kind of faith that sincerely seeks God. And that's what has been produced in this centurion. He is sincerely seeking God. And so he's wholeheartedly seeking God. And so what did God promise through Jeremiah? Wholehearted seeking finds God. Those who seek wholeheartedly find God. That's good news. Wholehearted seeking finds God. So that's the first. That this great faith is faith that seeks God. That's where it starts. It comes from hearing and it comes from seeking God. Faith that seeks God. So continuing on with the story. So Jesus is coming. The leaders have convinced him this is a guy that's a good guy. And so Jesus, again, he knows this guy's heart. So he goes to go to his house to heal his servant. But on the way, the man has sent some friends to give a message. And they say, don't bother coming to the house. He says, because I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy for you. He, being a friend of the Jews, would have recognized the Jewish idea of cleanliness, of not coming into Gentile homes and becoming unclean. And so he acknowledges, I'm a Gentile, I'm unworthy. You are holy and I'm unworthy. He's acknowledging that there's something more. And so this shows us that there's this humility in him. In Proverbs 3 and verse 5, the writer of Proverbs says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Never rely on what you think you know. This guy is a Roman soldier. This guy has authority, a centurion. He has authority over at least 100 men. And yet he acknowledges, I'm not worthy. He acknowledges, I can't save my servant, but I believe you can. So he humbles himself. So again, great faith. Number 2, faith that is humble. So it's faith that wholeheartedly finds God. That's the faith that seeks God. And it's faith that is humble. So then he says, or the messengers say, but this is what he says, but they said, but say the word, and my servant will be healed. That's verse 7. Luke 7, verse 7. But say the word, and my servant will be healed. That's the end of the verse. He's just told them, you don't need to come to my house. I'm not worthy. But you just say the word. And you've got the power to heal him. He's acknowledging that he recognizes Jesus' power to heal. Look at Matthew 8 and verse 13. This is Matthew's account of the very same story. Then Jesus said to the officer, you may go home now. Your faith has made it happen. Right then, his servant was healed. Right then. He says, your faith made this happen. But what was the faith in? It wasn't the faith that did it. It was the faith in what Jesus can do. So we need to have faith in what Jesus can do. That's what faith is about. Faith in what Jesus can do. So this man has faith, and as a result, at that moment, his servant is healed. So again, great faith. Not only is great faith that seeks God and faith that is humble, but thirdly, it is faith in Jesus' power. And so, then the soldier, this centurion, continues his message, his friends passing on this message in verse 8. And so he's just told him, I know you can heal him. I know you can heal him. In fact, he says, for I myself, this is the centurion's message, for I myself am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes, and that one come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it. What's he saying? He's saying, I understand authority. This soldier understood authority. He understood authority. He understood what it was to be under authority as well as to have authority. And so he understood the authority of Jesus. He says, I understand that you've got authority and that it's in your power. If you just speak the word, my servant is healed. I believe that that's the authority you have over life and death, the authority you have over all things. In fact, Jesus, before he ascended back to heaven, gave this message just before he gives the Great Commission, where he tells us to go and share the message, the good news, to all people and baptize them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. In Matthew 28, verse 18, Jesus came to them, his apostles, and he said, I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. The soldier recognized authority, and Jesus has all authority, and he recognized that. That's why he believed that Jesus could heal his son. So great faith not only is faith that seeks God, faith that is humble, faith in Jesus' power, but it is faith in Jesus' authority, Jesus' authority. So as we wrap things up, so this man, he trusts all of this. His faith is in faith enough to seek God, to seek Jesus, faith that he humbly acknowledges, I don't deserve this. I'm not commanding this. I'm asking. Faith that is in Jesus' power. I know you can heal. Faith in his authority. I know you can command, that you can do that. You don't even need to come into my house. You don't even need to be in the presence of the sick person, that you have the power to heal wherever you are. I acknowledge that. I recognize that. That's the kind of faith he had. And that's when Jesus makes that statement where he says in Luke chapter 7 and verse 9. Verse 9. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed at him. And turning to the crowd following him, he said, I tell you, I have not found such great faith even in Israel. Jesus says, he's amazed. It says Jesus is amazed. In fact, there's only 2 occurrences in the gospel where Jesus is amazed. This is one. Jesus is amazed at this man's great faith. The second one is found in Mark chapter 6, verse 6. This is going back a little bit in our story. Mark has the same account. This is when Jesus was in the synagogue at Nazareth, and he was teaching the people there. And they didn't believe. This is his hometown. He's just revealed that I'm the Messiah, and I've come. And they're drag him out of the town, and they're going to throw him off the top of a cliff to kill him. And in Mark 6 and verse 6 says, Jesus was amazed at how many people had no faith. The only thing that amazed Jesus was faith. Sadly, sometimes it was amazement that so many people have no faith. But once in a while, he is amazed by someone with great faith. I hope that person that he's amazed at about great faith is you. I hope it's me. I don't want to be one of those people that amazes Jesus because of no faith. I want to make sure that I'm someone that amazes him because I have great faith. And that's something I'm striving for, and I hope you are too. So let's have great faith and amaze Jesus. God bless and have a wonderful week.